John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, and we're joined by Jillian K. Melchior. Jillian's from the National Review Online. This is a follow-up to a story that Mary and I did with Jillian a month ago.
About a month ago.
Yeah, about a month ago. It's about an episode during the 2012 campaign that is vivid because it looked like it was produced by Hollywood. A spectacularly excited human being, I believe it was Cleveland, but it certainly wasn't Ohio, was talking directly into the video, you can with these magic of the iPhones, talking about Obama phone, which was a simple cell phone, and she kept calling it Obama phone and saying, we're going to vote for Obama, we're all out here to organize for Obama. I believe there was a street side demonstration in support of Mr. Obama, who won Ohio happily. But ever since then, there was this mystery of what is an Obama phone? Was it a Bush phone before, and will it be a Hillary phone in 4 years? Jillian reported on the first episode here is that Jillian attempted to get an Obama phone in New York and several places and were successful, more than one. In fact, there were so many that she let us have.
We actually got to see one here in the studio.
Obama
it was
phone.
great.
But now, Jillian, part two, Obama phone moves over to the supplier side. What have you learned, Jillian? Good evening to you.
Well, good evening. Well, we already knew that this program was completely rife with fraud. An FCC audit found out that 41% of those surveyed who were participating in the program hadn't even demonstrated eligibility. So, as you mentioned, I was curious back in August at whether I would be able to get a phone, and I was. Well, you have to look at the incentive structure behind it. And these phone companies have every incentive to push phones out on the street without doing due diligence. They get $9.25 per phone. And so what I found, and what the Scripps National Investigative Team has found in the past week, is that these companies are pushing unlawful practices.
So, Jillian, this isn't peanuts. We're talking about billions of dollars.
$2.2 billion.
Right?
Yep. $2.2 billion in the last year.
The puzzle here, now that you published the first version, and I thought certainly it would go away, and I remember you saying there was a member of Congress who was curious about $2 billion. Are they more than curious now that you've been able to demonstrate that the fraud might start with the suppliers?
They sure are, and I was just getting an update on this as I left the office today. So Senator Claire McCaskill and also Representative Tim Griffin, they're both asking for a federal probe of Terracom, one of the lifeline companies that has...
Oh, bravo, Jillian!
Oh, it's awful. So Terracom, what we've found out in the last week, I spoke to a former Terracom representative, and he was saying that he was trained by his managers to forge signatures, to falsify addresses. Applicants are supposed to check and verify that they're telling the truth under penalty of perjury. Well, this employee was trained to check the box himself and not even tell applicants he was doing it.
So this is a direct transfer from the U.S. taxpayer to telephone companies.
It's an indirect transfer, and that's very clever of them to do it that way, because whether or not you can call it a tax is kind of up for debate. I think it should be, because the taxpayers are paying for it. But if you look down at the bottom of your phone bill, there's a universal service fund fee. It's about $2.50 every month. And what that does is it funds a not-for-profit, which is administered by the FCC in turn, which hands out subsidized phones. So the left is trying to say, oh, this isn't a tax, this is a not-for-profit. But it's really taxpayers that are paying for it.
Detail. Scripps TV's national investigative correspondent. I keep staring at this. His name is Jim Osman. He's mentioned in your story in National Review Online. Scripps TV national investigative correspondent. Aha! There's a camera involved. There's somewhere out there's a video of people admitting on camera that this is a fraud, or saying, well, that we just did what we were told.
Boy, he's done a fantastic job. He actually went to Terracom and found out, well, first of all, they had leaked 170,000 applications online on accident. It included financial information, social security numbers, terrible security leak. He went through those applications, picked 51 of them, decided to interview the people who were listed on them. Well, it turns out that 50 of the 51 didn't recognize their signatures on the application, said it was forged, and a lot of them hadn't even heard of Terracom or the Lifeline program.
Where's the phone?
Where's the phone? That's a really good question. You look at addresses, and they were traced back to blight buildings and homeless shelters.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Really?
Blight buildings and homeless shelters. And that aligns.
Either the phones disappeared, or I've been told that you can sell these phones monthly.
You sure can.
So what are these, burner phones for drug dealers? I mean, is that what we're
very
talking?
Nice, Mary.
Is that
Explain
what we're talking
explain.
about?
All of a sudden,
Do I need to explain
the
that?
DEO shows up. Florida pulls rank here. What's a burner phone?
Doesn't
Mary?
everyone watch CSI, or am I the only
The
one?
Wire.
Please define
I mean,
for those innocents out
all
there.
right,
What's a burner phone?
fine. And no Florida jokes, please. It's a phone that can't be traced. It's a phone that can't be traced back to you, your name, your social security number. So criminals use burner phones.
Might be traced back to somebody else's social security number if the story's
exactly.
right. But yeah,
flunky.
People are taking these phones and they're selling them at pawn shops, selling them online. And I mean, you see fraud and abuse growing substantially under the Obama administration. You also see program costs growing substantially under the Obama administration. And that's for two reasons. Welfare expanded, making more people eligible. And also, it's a lot easier to sell a cell phone than it is to sell a landline.
So this is the same administration that is going to collate data from the IRS and other major agencies and tell us all what kind of subsidies we can get for national health care?
Boy, isn't that terrifying.
Wow.
Detail here. My memory from the original story, Jillian, is that this program started back in the 1980s when cell phones didn't much exist, when there were a handful of giants and very well-to-do people plugged in, couldn't actually call anybody else. Okay, so it started back then, and originally they were subsidizing landlines when landlines existed.
Correct.
And that was a lot easier to police, and it was a lot smaller number because you know where the landlines are. They can't walk around. You can't take them into a pawn shop or... I guess there's such a thing as a burner landline, but it seems paradoxical. Okay,
I don't think so, no.
It didn't exist. It moved through the 90s until we hit the Bush administration. Did they try to rein it in, or did it grow disproportionately?
Well, in 2008, it was the real date when it was expanded to include cell phones. But I think you've really got to look to the Obama administration because that's when welfare grew, more people became eligible for government programs, and some more people became eligible for Lifeline. Now, whether that's the entire factor, I'm skeptical because I wasn't eligible and I was able to get not just one phone in flagrant violation of Lifeline rules. I was able to get 3. But what I think the real problem here is the program is set up in a way that it provides perverse incentives to phone companies. They're making money off it. The street level commissioners are making $3 a pop to hand out phones. And really, the cell phone companies don't belong in the welfare business any more than the government belongs in the cell phone business.
It's 30 days since your report. Is there any indication that the activity on the street is cut back or has new guidelines or they've gone back into training?
You know, they keep trying to reform this program. And Terracom, the company that was under investigation, it's actually said that it's fired a lot of its employees. But I think this is a program that's going to be very tough to reform because the incentive structure is fundamentally flawed.
Is there another side of the argument, though, Jillian? Is there an argument to say, gosh, if you're a poor person and you have a job and you need to be reached because you have to be available to come in to do shifts, that this phone actually really does help you, and there is a good reason for government to be involved?
You know, I think you could argue that maybe having a landline would be okay. I think maybe having a phone that only dials 911 would be okay. But when you're looking at $2.2 billion of taxpayer cost, when you're looking at a 41% fraud rate, I think we have to ask, is it really worth it? And then on top of that, you look to technological innovation. There are a lot cheaper phones available now than there were when this program was created. You can buy phones that you pay as you go by the minute. There are lots of options under $10. I think the need is negated.
The man in your story, Strode, I learned from you that he's taking college courses to become a pastor, a social worker, that he uses a phone right now, one of these phones that are subsidized phones, right?
He sure does. And I was really interested to talk to him because he's got the kind of nuanced view. He thinks that it's an important program. Yet on the flip side, he's kind of come a long way, too. He was a 3-time convicted felon who didn't have to pass a background check to hand out subsidized phones. So he's trying to change his life. Maybe that's the program at its best, but I think he's also pretty evidently seen the program at its worst. And the fact that he's willing to talk about it as a recipient, that's pretty striking.
One possibility here, I'm just looking around for who benefits. Is there any indication of organized crime that this has been...
The drug
this has
dealers.
been... No,
That's
I
what I'm
don't just
saying.
mean one-off. I mean that somebody's packaged this and bundled it into big cash not just the phone companies, but the ability to
The
grab
triads.
dozens of phones and sell them.
Boy, I haven't seen reports out on that. I think it would be tough to prove. I think you could call it criminal how much waste is going on. I also think that Americans might be really interested to know who's actually receiving the money. So Carlos Slim, the world's richest man, Mexican billionaire, in 2011, which is the last year I can find on record, he got $500 million in lifeline payments, compensating for handing out these
He
funds.
also bought a share of the New York Times,
Yes.
didn't
He
he?
did. It's corporate welfare.
Just a fact.
With the
corporate
lifeline money. The detail here, since your story, have you heard anyone from the telephone side or the regulation side speak up saying we're going to stop this abuse and that we're going to explain to the taxpayers we have to prepare for this? I mean, the NRO is not an unknown publication, and you've hit it twice now.
Yeah, boy, I'm sure interested to see what's going to happen. Sessions actually sent 10 questions
Jeff
to the
Sessions.
FCC. Yes. To the FCC demanding answers for why is this happening again and again. That's supposedly due out on the 26th. Whether the FCC deigns to respond, I'll be curious.
Final detail. Right now, we could leave this studio and find an Obama phone in Manhattan.
Oh, you could. Well, it's probably not open right now, but if you show up at the welfare office tomorrow and try to get food stamps, they'll approach you on the street.
You think they actually shut down for nighttime hours? Is that kind of restriction, huh?
I think so. I think it's a 9 to 5 job.
Maybe you
but
could go to one of the triads
Yes.
and buy a phone, John.
All right, finally, one detail here. We're not making this up. An Obama phone is not what it's called. What are they formally called if you're looking for them online or if you're searching for them?
It's formally called the Lifeline Program.
Lifeline, one word.
Lifeline Program. Track Phones, one of them Assurance, Terracom. These are all vendors that hand it out.
Jillian K. Melchior. This is their second report on the Obama phone, which you've just heard in detail. There are many questions to be answered. Certainly the big one here is who's running this program at the FCC. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal each day at WSJ.com. I'm John Batchelor.